Does your ToneMaster Pro sound like crap? Let's fix it. We're going to go through 5 different tips to get your ToneMaster Pro sounding more pro. So calm down if you got upset at the goofy title. The thing about these modelers, about all of them really, they all take a little bit of finessing and fine-tuning to get really professional results. I know a lot of people love the ToneMaster Pro, but a lot of people aren't crazy about it. And myself included, when it first came out, I was just not a fan of how it sounded. It took me a couple of, failed presets, a couple of big mistakes, before I really got my workflow dialed in, and now I'm getting really awesome results that I'm really loving with the Fender ToneMaster Pro. So who am I? My name's Steve Sterlacci. If it's your first time here on the channel, I do all things digital guitar gear. I do all things with these modelers, ToneMaster Pro and all the others. I even have a podcast dedicated to digital amp modeling. So if this is your type of thing, consider subscribing, because 80% of my views come from people that are not subscribed. So on to today's video. 5 tips that we're going to talk about. I use this preset to showcase my favorite effects in the ToneMaster Pro, but this is kind of like a follow-up to that with some ways that you can finesse your presets to make them sound way better. And there's nothing groundbreaking here. I mean, this is a very straightforward unit to use, but there are some ways that we can get max results here. One of them being, and something that kind of never gets really addressed or talked about in a lot of this space, is output levels and gain staging. So in your global settings, you do have an instrument pad here, which, if you didn't know, if you're having a hard time getting clean sounds, you want to turn that off, make sure it's off. But you don't really have any options for your input. But when you get to your output level, you have things like line and instrument. And it's important to note that if you're gain staging properly, right? If you're going to a mixing console, then you want to send it an instrument level. If you're going to an FR speaker or to a PA speaker directly with nothing in between, then you want to swap this to line. That's why I set output 2 to line, because typically I'll go 1/4 inch into my FR or my floor wedge, and that is going to want a line level signal versus an instrument level signal going direct to front of house. And that's how I'm set up here. XLR stereo right into my interface here. And that's why that's set to instrument. And then we're going to go over to our mixer tab, because your mixer tab is very important. There's a lot of stuff here that you could be using to your advantage to get the best results on stage. So if you're going to play a show, or if you're going to jam with friends, this is super important and something that I want you to constantly be referencing. And again, you get to this, you just hit the settings cog and go to mixer. Down here, you'll notice I don't have these highlighted, because if whatever's highlighted is controlled by the big master knob on the far top right, I don't want that to be something I can control as far as my outputs. So I'm going to turn that off for output 1, and I'm just going to leave that maxed out. Maxed out means unity gain. Unity gain meaning 0. There's no attenuation. So anything you pull back is you attenuating the signal. So that's actually dropping your signal, as opposed to keeping it at the top, where unity gain, meaning where it's supposed to be, if you will. And we're going to adjust our preset volumes and amp levels to make this make sense. Now for output 2 in headphones, you're going to have 2 options here. And this is really important, because output 2 is going to be what goes to my FR. So I would like to keep this with a little bit of room to play in case I want to up my stage volume after sound check when nobody's looking. And then it's either you're going to be on stage with an FR or you're going to be plugged into headphones at home. So I don't mind having these 2 tethered. And whatever you want to set it to is fine. If you're playing through headphones, set it where it sounds good. So output 1 going XLR, whatever you're going to front of house with or to your interface with, I don't want to touch. So now you'll notice, now that I've got the guitar on, I'm kind of hovering between -20 and -15, depending on how hard I'm hitting. If I pick gentle, versus strumming hard, around -15. There's There's a lot of debate on where you want to sit with your gain staging, but I typically like to be between -15 and -20 dB. That gives, it'll give front of house some room to adjust you. But if you look at my meter here in my DAW, you'll see I'm peaking at -3. And what that means is if I were to up this anymore, I would start clipping. So whatever I'm playing into now, I basically have no room to go up. So that's going to leave your engineer with less room to play. So for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why, this output does not correlate to something that it's being sent to. So I keep this around -20, -15 so that I'm not maxing out, or so that I am sending that good strong signal to front of house. They basically won't have to touch your signal whatsoever. Okay, so now we're going to go to the second tip, and we're going to go to the cabinet section for this, because the cabinet section in ToneMaster Pro, after one of the most recent updates, went a really big change where we now have the option to do cab 1 and cab 2. And this is not something that has to look like this. I didn't do this. So if I were to remove cabinet 2, this goes to a normal cabinet. Then I just hit. And then if you're, for example, pulling up a preset with one cabinet on it, you can just click add cab and it will add that second cabinet right there. I'm going to reopen my preset so I can get that back. And learning how to blend your microphones, I've got a whole video dedicated to this if you want to check that out. But finding the right blend of microphones to get the perfect sound that you want. And while you're in the cabinet section, one of the most important things about your modelers and using them live especially is that you need to understand what your low and high cuts are going to be doing. And you're going to need to use them, I promise you. Then that's nothing to be embarrassed about or to be ashamed of. So if you get to a venue, you plug in for the first time and you go through a PA system and all of a sudden everybody's like, holy crap, you're way too bright. This is your first stop, in my opinion. I go right for the high cut, and you could do it on both cabs. Click on the high cut. 8, 6, 9-ish, whatever you want to start at is fine. Typically, guitar speakers only go up to 5.5, which is worth noting. But don't be afraid to go as low as this needs to go to sound right in the particular venue. And you can do that on both of the mics, change your high cuts and change your low cuts. I find with the modelers, it's rare that I have too much low end in the PA system where it's a problem where I have to really go for a low cut. You want to keep it around 125, 100 to 125, whatever sounds best to you. But those are kind of general guidelines, around 125 or less with the low cut, and anywhere from 9K to even as low as 5K if you need it for the high cuts. The third one is going to be relevant to all amplifiers in ToneMaster Pro. And this is not unique to ToneMaster Pro. This is just a general thing with everyone. Look where my bass knob is. Is that lacking any low end? That's with the bass on too. Most amplifiers, when you pull it up, have too much gain and too much bass. So be sure to keep an eye out for how much low end you actually need. And now that we also, while we're on amp settings, we have a good cabinet section dialed in, you don't need to touch it. Just because this is a Fender Creamback doesn't mean that you need to have the Fender amp. If I were to just go to my amp head and I were just going to go replace this with literally anything else in here, let's say the Friedman here, I'm going to have a really great starting point. But now I just pulled this up. It might sound great to you right now, but let's see if we get any additional clarity if I lower that bass. Might be a little touch bright. We could drop some presence. And that sounds great too, but how much gain do we actually need? Let's see if we drop that. So in my opinion, sounds way better with less gain and less bass. Let's try one more amp and let's just see. Let's go with the Mark II here, the Marksman Channel 2. Now you might say, oh, Steve, I got you because that sounds great as it is. Look where the bass knob is. The bass on this is already at 1. And this isn't like my preset or anything. Bright switch off, the treble shift is up, bass shift is off, deep switch is off. This is just how the amp sounds. And now let's see if we can even gain this down, see if we get any more clarity. And compare that to where we started, which was at like 9. I don't know, that might not cut through as much with all of that extra gain. And I also, while I'm here, let's go and take a peek at our mixer, because remember what I said before, we're going to check our outputs. And you might be wondering, how do I always make sure that my levels are there? On all of the amps, you have an amp level here. Amp level and preset level. So you have amp level there, or you can go to your settings, or you go to your preset settings, and you're going to go to your preset volume, which you see is at 37. I like to keep the preset volume lower and the amp volume higher. I'm assuming, and this is not specified in any literature on the ToneMaster Pro, official literature at least, that the amp level could potentially cause effects to break up or have unwanted distortion in post-amp effects. So that's something to keep an eye out for. I just like to work with the amp level and just keep this low so that I have enough room to work with my signal. Whereas if I go back to the original Deluxe, you'll see this amp level is at 100. So I'll take my good clean sounds and I'll crank that amp level up to 100. So using that as my bass, I'm never going to get my clean sound lost compared to my overdriven sounds. That's a good way to keep your presets balanced. The next one is one I stole from my fractal buddy, Cooper Carter, who is the #1 guy in the fractal world. And this is something that he does to all of his clients. He works for major rock stars that use fractal gear. And he does this mid push into the front end of the amp, which I find awesome. It's included in Fractal's amp block, which is really cool. It's obviously a much more advanced device, more expensive, but there's no reason we can't facsimile that here in ToneMaster Pro using this EQ3, this parametric EQ. I've got the Q set all the way down, which means that it's the flattest it's going to be. And then with your mid-range, there's a mid-range frequency here that I want you to experiment with this and go anywhere from I don't know, 1300 down to 700, and take this mid knob and I want you just to bump it up and see what a difference it makes. So I think I liked it. Where did I have it? I don't remember. Let's see how that sounds. So it kind of does a little bit of low and high cut and really pushes the mids if I emphasize it a lot. It kind of like shoves that EQ forward. Obviously, we don't want this at 10. If you keep it at like 3 to 5. So you get that subtle push of just, forced mid-range that works really well in front of amps. Let's actually go to, let's go back to that Friedman and see what we wind up with there. Oh, I don't want to replace that. I want to replace the amp. Let's even see the plexi since we didn't do this yet. I'm going to go ahead and dial out some of the gain and the bass because now I'm using all of the tools that we just talked about already to get that up to -15. Great. Let's hear what the EQ does to that. So to me, it kind of just rounds out the sound. It kind of trims off what you don't need. And this I might even go down to 800. So this is more pushing those guitar-friendly frequencies forward. Guitar-friendly frequencies, say that 10 times fast. Okay, and the last one, we're going to go with the studio compressor after the amp. This is just a sweetener and a fattener. It just is it's a make everything gooder pedal. So there's way less sustain. It almost feels like I need to really hit harder with my picking hand, whereas with the compressor on, so there's a very subtle difference, but the difference is really in your feel. So you could just copy those settings over there. And yeah, I've got the blend at 50% too. So that studio compressor just makes everything sound better. So if I were to take away the couple of tricks here, and say even we just did the amp and cab, see what a difference that EQ and the studio compressor make. I really feel like those two make a very big difference. All right, so those are 5 tips to get your ToneMaster Pro sounding more pro. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if it's your first time here, consider subscribing. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.